everybody. Welcome back to Earth and Stars Spiritual Wellness Center. And we have a special treat for you today. Dr. Gail's in the house.
Yes, hello everybody, and thanks, Mary, for having me.
Absolutely. It's definitely my honor having you in our home over here. With Dr. Gail, we're going to have a special treat today because what we want to talk about is this bridging. We want to bridge a few things for you guys because sometimes we have trouble understanding how certain aspects of spirituality can fit into our reality. How things like what Dr. Gail does, like starseed mediumship and things with aliens and things in those realms, how that fits not only into our spirituality, but how it can help us heal, how it can help us connect to our whole self, to our soul. So, how can we bridge the human with the interdimensional, the physical with the metaphysical? And if you don't know Dr. Gail and you pop on our show and you haven't had experiences like this, you might not be able to relate to any of it or understand how it fits into your life. And we're going to fix that today, aren't we? We're going to fix it.
We're going to try to fix it.
We're going to fix it. We're going to fix it. So I feel like this is a good transformation kind of talk because Dr. Gail did not pop out of her mama talking to aliens. You know, she didn't.
Well, I did. I just didn't realize it.
But there was a very human time in your life. So it's almost like having to rewind all the way to, because you used to be a doctor, right? You did chiropractic. And before that, you were a surgical nurse. Is that right?
Yeah, surgical nurse. And I specialized in open heart surgery and neurosurgery. And I did that for years and then went back to school for chiropractic and then opened my practice in Florence, South Carolina. And then after I retired to take care of my dad who had dementia. So it was not until 2020 when we all went in and I wasn't taking care of anybody. And I decided to try this old meditation stuff. Let me try that my whole world started opening up.
Why did you want to start meditation?
Well, it was the first time I was actually listing things to take care of myself because my whole life I've been taking care of everybody else. So I wasn't taking any care. It was the only time I wasn't taking care of anybody. So I listed the things that I wanted to do. And that was on my list, the one that was most profound on changing who I was at that time. But, my first experience was an angel showing up while I was meditating. I jumped off my couch thinking something was wrong. I was crazy. I really went in the direction of a brain tumor because I thought I must have a brain tumor. And I've been fortunate to have people placed in my life to validate what was going on with me without saying I was crazy or actually I was the one that was saying all those things. If I hadn't had the people to validate what I was doing in my life, I probably would have been on medication or, under therapy or psychiatric therapy. All those type of things have probably been going on with me. But, we have been trained for so many years, people who are having alien experiences, the abductions, those things like that. We've been trained from our government, the media, that all those people are crazy. I mean, that's what we've been trained. And we have ostracized them and put them in corners and talked about them. And people have had their lives ruined when they come out and talk about their experiences. So, and I was one of them. I mean, I had my patients coming into my practice going, "Oh, I saw a spaceship." And I'm going, "Oh God, that guy's crazy. What are they talking about? A spaceship? No, I know they're crazy." And so I came from that side of it all the way to the transformation of having to accept that I was having experiences. And most people, if you have not had an experience with an extraterrestrial, it is hard to understand it. It really is, because the media and our government has trained us to be skeptics about that. So it is a really big hurdle for you to understand what we're talking about when you haven't had your own experience. So I trying to help those people who are having experiences. We're trying to bring ourselves together so we can share and talk about it. And it's okay. Our families are thinking we're crazy. They haven't had those experiences, or our friends, but we come together to talk about it so we can validate each other and understand each other.
I love how the first experience kind of trained you and cultivated a space inside of you to create that safe space for other people who need that validation. I heard you talking about how you had a number of people who validated you instead of
Right.
thinking that you were crazy, and that gave you a safe space to flourish and grow in and explore this other side of you. The angel that came to you, was this like during meditation, like in your third eye space, or was this like
It
3D, like
It was while I was meditating. She came. Well, actually, I will back up a little bit. Is I had already, of all my life, been able to know when people who have passed have been around. I could smell them. I would not talk about it, but that was more accepted than being talking to aliens.
wow.
So that was much more accepted. But when my dad passed, I was started seeing him. And we started developing a place to go talk on a bench while I still sit there and talk to him about family, money matters, things like that. I would talk to him. Well, he started off, he was always there to make me comfortable. So when this angel came in, she flew around him and to my face and was trying to hand me a bracelet. And it was so real that I came flying off the couch going, what has just happened? Because she kept putting this bracelet, kept putting it in my face. And I didn't know. But anyway, so I remember going running to Meg and sitting down there forever in the office before I'd say anything, and told her what happened. And I was going, I'm going crazy, or I got a brain tumor. I need an MRI. And she said, it's called a spiritual awakening. And I'm going, I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know what a spiritual awakening was. I had to go Google it. You go, what is a spiritual awakening? And so after that, my dad and I, when we would sit on the bench, I used to have an extraterrestrial, a different extraterrestrial come up and meet me. My first one was a little blue petite alien. Her name was Matt Kai, and she was cute. She was chatty Cathy, but she came and sat beside me, and I kept looking at my dad like, why are you allowing this to happen? And at that time, it kept being a parade. So he created that safe place for me to be able to meet these different aliens and extraterrestrials. But every time I met one, I go running to Meg saying, this is what happened. I need a MRI. I know I got a brain tumor. And she would just tell me what kind of alien or extraterrestrial it was. She would go, okay, that was an Arcturian. Okay, that was a hybrid. That was a gray. And she would tell me, because I didn't even know the different types at that time. I didn't know anything. So, so that went on until I started doing rescue missions. Actually, I met somebody else um, that lived in Massachusetts that would validate, and we would go on missions together. She was an energy healer, and I was the medical person. So I did the medical part, and she did the energy part when we were doing these missions. And the missions were going into these Area 51 type places and getting the sick and dying extraterrestrials out. And so she was there to validate that part of it. And that was for about 6 weeks. But hindsight, she was there to teach me how to work with energy. So that was a big 6 week crash course lesson for me at that time. But I don't know if you wanted me to go off into that area, Mary. Go
Yeah.
back.
Well, I'm kind of picking up that there were different steps, different levels to your transformation, and it feels like part of your training has been number one, that you've always had this clair, just
Right.
being human. What is that called? Clairgustance? The smell? What? No,
Oh,
that's taste.
Gnostic is it not, I don't know. I don't know.
Anyways, so you've already had that clair. You have that life built up of caring for others, nurturing for others, um, which causes a lot of buildup of energy in the chest for
Mhm.
male or for male or female, and then you go into your father now passing, and you're still using that Claire to sit with him and be with him. You have this visit from an angel, an angelic visit. And that even feels like another step on the rung. So we've got dad's spirit here, angel spirit here. And now suddenly there's this parade of alien spirits coming in, or interdimensional beings, I should say, because they're not like souls. They're not like dead souls or anything like that, like your dad was. So it feels like there were steps to this. What do you feel like, because they're all different, the Passover soul, the angel, and the alien? What did you feel like the difference was between the angel and the alien, and why the angel was more comfortable for you to meet before you met the aliens?
Well, I felt like my father was directing the meeting, and
Mhm.
I laugh at the fact that the angel was absolutely beautiful, and I'm going, of course he would let a pretty girl in first. It's kind of I thought of it at the time, was that she was so pretty that maybe that was going to be an easier
Mhm.
way or journey for me to first meet an angel who was really pretty. I'm not real sure about that, but I do think you're right. I think first I was meeting the people who had passed, which was a very easy path for me to take. Where was even when I had met my dad, I was able to talk to other people, that I knew about their family members who had passed. I had become a medium at that time. I could tell them who was there and that information. And then the next step was the angel, and then again, then it went to the extraterrestrial. So you're right. I think it was like a stepping stone of getting used to the vibration and also being able to get to that level.
Mhm. So the angel that you saw then, do you feel like, because we're getting used to the energy as we go up, did you feel like the interdimensional beings that you're meeting, or the aliens, do you feel like they were a higher vibration than the angel that you saw?
Yes, and that angel's still with me. She is my angel. Her name's Gloria. She will come to me in human form also.
Mhm.
Yeah, she's still with me. And in fact, all of them are still with me.
That was gonna be my next question, is if she was less of an archangel and more of like a personal guardian angel.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what, because I remember the day she showed up in human form. She showed up in wearing white jeans, a white t-shirt, and white tennis shoes, and had like this Dolly Parton blonde hair. And
Uh-huh.
I'll never forget that when she sat down beside me, and I looked at, nobody's gonna not know that you're an angel, because she had this white light around her. And but then I realized I might be the only one seeing that white light. It might that might be the only me, but otherwise that's what she looked like, or that's what she looks like in her human form. But I think you're right. I think she's my personal angel.
So by human form, is this where we're saying now that we've gone from seeing this vision in our third eye space during meditation to now it looks like they're here in the 3D form, like me and you?
Yes, for me, that line's very blurred from
Mhm.
3D to 5D. I mean, I do recognize it, but it's still very real for me. And in fact, the very first time that happened to me was when I was sitting in your store, the Rustic Raven, when you, Meg, and I were sitting in there, and that first extraterrestrial ET came walking at the door, and I could see them, but y'all could not. And I was freaking out because she had my emotions going all up and all over the place. In just seconds, her vibration just had changed everything in me. And so that was a big, huge step at that time. Whereas that line was getting dulled for me.
Mhm. And that probably adds to your "Am I crazy?" Because there's a very blurred line there, because I remember that day, and I remember that later I could sense that presence, and I could sense where in the room it was. I could even read on it if I allowed myself to know a little bit about it, but it wasn't like watching a a 3D person walk through the door for me.
Right.
So I imagine that having a safe space and a supportive environment and friends who believe you and say, "Yeah, that's right." I think that that's very important.
I remember how exhausted I was after that day too,
Mm.
because that was a different step for me. And that day, that night, and the next day, I was exhausted from that experience.
I bet, because you're around those vibrations that are so high, and you're having to be so high to be able to match that and to see that in such a 3D kind of way.
Right.
How much time passed between your first vision of the angel and you going to work on rescue missions?
July was my July of 2020 was when I first met one, and then my first mission was in November. It was quick.
So you have a 4-month crash course in meeting these different beings and adjusting your energy. So it feels like your first level was basically energy adjustment. You had to change your vibration of your body, and then they gave you a mission.
Yeah, and there was a very physical aspect to it too. Whenever I started going up, when I went up in my very first spaceship, when I started going up in spaceships, I was nauseated. In fact, they told me before I went on my first one, and I didn't know why they told me this. They told me to go on a bland diet for 5 days. And I didn't know why, but I went, huh, what the heck? Bland diet? Oh, yeah, pasta, breads. Oh, we're going to do this for 5 days. No harm. And on the fourth day, I had a gold being, Monto, show up in front of me and taking me out to a spaceship that I went followed him in. Now, after I went up in the spaceship and I felt like I was in orientation. I didn't know why anything of this was happening, but even at that time, I felt like, oh gosh, this is like feels like orientation. I was still sick, nauseated, tired. In fact, I was so nauseated and sick, I was getting ginger and everything for it. And it lasted a good 2 weeks until they showed up again. And I went up and I kept having the same reaction. And until finally it started subsiding. Tired, nauseated. The nausea was awful for me during that time, trying to get used to it.
So when you started doing these missions with your other support system out there, so this was a real person in Massachusetts, right?
Right.
A 3D person, and you guys just start doing these rescue missions together. So is there one in particular that stands out to you?
Well, yes, and I'll start saying that she will not get in a spaceship. She will only do groundwork. And I love flying in the spaceship. So we were a perfect match. She was energy, only wanted to stay on the ground. I was medical, and I loved to fly. So I thought we were a perfect team that were going to be together forever. But
Mhm.
as I said, hindsight, she was to teach me how to work with energy. But I would say there's quite a few missions, but maybe one of the most memorable, well, there's quite a few memorable ones, and I'm writing a book. This will all be coming out in my book, hopefully before the end of the year. That the things that she would do would be going in and unlocking doors and unlocking cells and doing some energy work. And then we would transport them up into the spaceship, and then I would take over on the medical aspect. Now, we did a lot of, like, Arcturians usually needed breathing cream. The Greys usually were starving. Those were kind of the standard things that were happening with them that we were having to take care of. And so we I eventually took over the ground part too, what she was doing. I went in and I would do the unlocking the doors and getting them out, and then I would have to transport myself back with them on the spaceship. So eventually, I did her part too. So I was doing all of it, but we did a lot of also. I was very involved in the human hybridization program, where some of our missions included a C-section of a woman in Brazil where she had one gray looking baby and one human looking baby. And she kept the human looking baby and we took the gray baby. Um,
Mm.
so it was somebody who could not have children. So she was gifted a child. And also a gray hybrid had a child. So I was very involved in a lot of different situations with that. I think she only did one C-section with me in the beginning, and then she was kind of out of the picture. Now, later on, when I had moved to a different spaceship, a much larger one, the Athena, and that was kind of like a trauma center. Like, we were going to big traumas, like big hundreds, and where there had been fighting and battles, and we were getting these people and we were taking care of them and repairing them. And I had somebody else that came in that validated what I was doing at that time. So I have just been very fortunate to have somebody around to validate what I'm doing, where a lot of people don't. So that's what I'm doing now, is trying to validate other people's experiences where I can read on it and tell them if it's true, if it happened, or give them more information on what did happen, because everybody's telling them they're crazy. I'm the safe place for them to come and talk about that.
I love that. I have a left field question. If and if you don't know, that's fine. So all of these rescue missions, they were centered in Area 51, where it's like the government has been.
Right. It's Area 151, but it was all in the Midwest. I mean, we went to Mexico. There's some places in Mexico, Arizona. They're all in that Midwest part that we were doing rescue missions. That they're like hidden underground, and we did some rescue missions outside of the U.S. Like we went to Antarctica, and I can't remember some of the other places, but that's basically what it was. They were Area 51 type places, but there are a lot of them, and they are kept underground.
That's what I was getting to, because the download I was getting when you were talking about that, I kept hearing Area 52, as if there's like other places that we don't really know about. We know in Area 51 kind of what that entails at this point, and studies on alien beings and things like that. But what we don't always know is there's lots of these
Right.
underground places.
Yes, there are. And they're all in the Midwest. I think the first one we started off was, I mean, I know Colorado, Arizona, Texas, all the way down to Mexico. I mean, we were going to all of them.
Don't get me started on Colorado, honestly. Just
Why?
don't.
What's wrong with Colorado for you?
Well, because that's where I got locked out of my body by an alien. Was to my visit in Colorado, and that was a terrifying experience. If you guys missed that show, I'm telling you, I don't do all the stuff that Dr. Gail does. I don't live with aliens all the time. In fact, I don't pay them that much attention. I understand how they can help people heal. I understand their medical abilities and how it can help with depression and anxiety and things like that. I understand how they fit into the whole. And I understand how we're not just one thing, because at this point, our souls have been through so many different universes and dimensional spaces. But I don't do what Gail does, guys. But I went and visited Colorado. And I think it was the second night that I was there. I had a weird experience where someone was banging on the door in the middle of the night while I was trying to
Oh,
sleep. My
that's right.
phone was
You
ringing.
called, you called me about that, going, what happened?
What is going on? My phone is ringing, and and these were real things. Like the phone was really ringing, the door, like in the 3D, and someone was actually at the door. And I like looked through the people, and I saw the man who was there, but I didn't open the door. And I went back to sleep. And then next thing I know, like I'm in this room, like a gray room with one door, and there's a window in the door, and it just looked like I was trapped in a padded room. That's the only thing I can say. And but I realized I was in a t-shirt and underwear, which is how I sleep. So like I realized, okay, well, I'm going to get out of here. And I start moving towards the door, and a man steps between me and the door, trying to like back up, like trying to keep me there. But I realized that the man was the same man I saw through the peephole before I went to sleep. But I sensed that that was not a man. I sensed it was some sort of being that was wearing that man's face, just because it was the last face I saw before or something. And it was the most terrifying, vulnerable feeling I've ever had. And then next thing you know, I feel someone sitting on the edge of the bed, and I come out of it like, and I was back in my hotel room. I'm telling you, I was so terrified. Like, I swear someone was in the room. Like, I was looking in the curtains under the bed, in the closet. Like, I just knew someone was in there. It was so terrifying. They had locked me out of my body.
Yeah.
And Gail was the one to tell me I wasn't crazy, because
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so I live with PTSD. I'm having a panic attack right now. I've never had a panic attack like that. Never. It was like over the top. And I said, Gail, what happened to me? But there are experiences like that out there. So there's you're a safe place for abductions then. What do you want to say about abductions? Because we talk a lot about like aliens helping us heal, like the medical centers and how they can help us do DNA surgeries and things like that. But I personally, like on our stuff, because we're a healing show and a healing channel, I don't think that we talk very much about actual abductions or the point of them, because I think these are the things that make people feel fearful of aliens.
Well, and actually, the abductions is because we don't understand what's happening. So we're
Mhm,
labeling it as abductions, whereas
mhm,
most of the time we're being brought up for some healing, and
mhm.
that's what they're doing. Or you are part of that extraterrestrial group, and they are trying to study how your body's reacting to Earth. So that is part of the hush hush that's happening to us, not being able to express. So when something like that happens and we can't talk about it, or if we're talking about it and we're told we're crazy and we can't explore what happened, it's labeled as abduction. I've been kidnapped, I've been abducted, this is what they did to me. But most of the time when I'm finding out about these things or reading on the people, it's actually something they've asked for, like somebody help me heal this, or help me this, or help me that. Well, here comes the help, and then it's labeled as an abduction, and it's just because of the not understanding it. And a lot of it is already in our contract before we come here, that we're actually, say somebody's a Palladian and they're coming from a Palladian family and they're spending their time on Earth in a human body. Well, the Palladians are wanting to know how that body's doing. So you're going up and they're looking at your body, seeing how you're doing. They want to make sure you're okay. And we're going back on Earth and we can't talk about it. Or if we do, oh my gosh, I was kidnapped, I was abducted. And so that's how it's perceived. So a lot of that, if we're able to talk about it and somebody is they think they're abducted, the very next day and they can openly talk about it, then it's not going to be as traumatic of an experience as if when they can't talk about it.
I'm still kind of mad that I'm not going to say mad, okay, because I don't want to sound ungrateful for whatever they were doing to my body while I was trapped out of it. But I do feel like the alien wearing the man's face, and I realized he was wearing the man's face because he was trying to make me more comfortable. He was trying to make me think he was another human. But like he could have literally opened his mouth and said, "Mary, it's okay. We come in peace. We're here to heal you." You know what I mean? But they have their ways, I think.
Well,
So,
they're also not human.
right.
We,
So they
we
don't
have,
have that.
yeah, we'd have the expectation that they're human and should be interacting with us as humans, and they're not.
Mm-hmm. They're just doing what they're there to do. So instead of abductions, we can call these check-ins, right?
Mhm.
Um, so
Well, I do think there are some abductions, that are terrifying, and they're probably from like a negative race or a negative entity or a negative type of alien. And I do think those do exist. It's just that I would say most of them are not. Most of them are more of a healing or experiment or checking in.
okay. And that makes sense. So with these check-ins, you mentioned that sometimes they're from like a certain race of alien that that person might be living in a human body. So is this what we would call a starseed?
Yes. Oh, with star seeds, I think all of them are coming from a different planet. Some, I would say, those are probably more hybrids that are actually have a lot more alien DNA in them, and that they're more interested in. But I do think, the star seeds are people who are coming from, they are from different planets, different stars, and have come into a human body to experience life on Earth. But the ones that are probably being checked in on the most are probably the ones that have more DNA of that species. And I would consider them more hybrids.
Okay. So at this point, with how the earth right now has so many like old souls on it and stuff, do you think that just about everyone on earth now is a starseed? Or do you think there are people who have only ever incarnated on earth?
Well, I consider, and it might be just because of my experience and what I deal with, that I think everybody's a star seed that come from somewhere else. But I'm not so sure that we have so many different extraterrestrials. Like we have some inner Earth beings, like the Lemurians who live inside Earth. We have our ant people who live inside Earth, which, how do you label that? I mean, we consider them aliens, but they're of Earth. So,
Mhm.
and they've been here longer than we have. So it gets into the definitions and the dialogue. It gets a little fuzzy when you're going into that, because one of the first things that happened to me when I moved to Mount Shasta was I got a lesson from them, the Lemurians, to call them Lemurians, or inner Earth beings. And they said that they're inner Earth beings, the one that live inside of Earth, their own Earth beings, like us, that live on the Earth, and then they're off Earth beings, like the ones that live off Earth. And those were more appropriate terminology than what we use. And so I was going, okay, now how am I going to incorporate this? Everything. I mean, because we just label everything as alien. I mean, the Lemurians have the capacity to have spaceships and get out of there, but they live inside the Earth. They've always lived inside the Earth, and they are a combination of different beings, of the Arcturians, Palladians, and from Sirius B, the Syrians, and they're kind of a mixed race in there. But we consider them aliens, and they've been here longer than we have.
Well, of course, because that's the polarized duality kind of term, right? Like they're not us, so they're alien.
Right.
Whereas the alien was like, bro, we're all just like beings. So there's the inner earth, the on earth, and the outer earth. And we, you and I, just happen to be the on earth
Mhm.
beings. But there is a slight difference between them all, because more than just where we live, because what makes them inner earth versus outer earth versus on earth beings is their dimensional vibration, because we're very 3D
Right.
and they are not, which
Right.
is why a lot of the time we don't see them with our physical eyes. It's more of the third eye space, or a mix. Especially for you, I think that at this point you can see them all almost like they're standing there, but you've been through the transformation from the
Right.
human to the metahuman. So let's move back to the transformation space. So you've gone through like the raising your vibration, you've gone through the training and getting to see them and meet them, you've gone through the training of learning how to heal. What was the big transformation inside? Like the DNA transformation that brought you to metahuman?
Yeah, well, I'm going to back up just a little bit on that first spaceship that I was on, the astromedical one, and how I've been trained all my life to do what I'm doing there. Because when I'm on that first spaceship, I was trained as a neurosurgeon to be able to take out implants and how to balance hormones and chemistry and energy, and use light therapy. I was trained. But when I walked into the operating room as a neurosurgeon on the spaceship for the first time, it was so familiar to me because I had been using that same equipment on Earth as an operating room nurse. So it was all fancier, more advanced, more, had a lot more abilities and things. But the basic things for me was I'm walking in there going, oh, yeah, that looks like an x ray machine, even though that discovers the implants. I know how to use that. Let me crank that. I can figure that out. This does. And so it was so familiar to me. And then it really hit me after that I have been training all my life to do what I'm doing on the spaceship. They had directed my life from being a nurse to go work in the operating room to then becoming a chiropractor, treating people. And then this, so it, my life has been mapped out for me, which I think a lot of us have been. And my experience with my dad with dementia and diabetes, that came into play also on how to treat traumas, people, elderly, and things that they were going through and things that they needed. So my whole life has been mapped out for me to be able to do what I'm doing with them. They've been training me all my life.
I love that. I feel like that's part of our life path, part of our light codes, if you will. When we're in our human space, we still have the same light codes. We still have the same gifts and abilities. We just apply them where we can. So you applied your abilities into that human space, which is nursing, which is chiropractics, which is caretaking, things like that. And then you went through your shift and were applying them into interdimensional beings and outer world beings. See, now I have new terminology. This is more inclusive of everybody. But you did go through a pretty big transformation through all of this that changed your DNA, that changed your body, even your appearance. Would you like to talk about any of that, like your paradigm shift in that?
Well, yeah, it was when I was moved to Mount Shasta. I knew I was called out there by the Lemurians to come work with them. However, what I ended up working with was them, but mostly the elementals, which I learned all about the elementals, how noisy they were, how they woke me up in the middle of sleep to work with them. And that was a big, but the physical changes is I think they sent me to Mount Shasta to isolate me because I think if I went through what I went through there in public or at home, I would not have been able to make the transformation that they were wanting me to do because I would have had a lot of interference in it. So being isolated in Mount Shasta, even though I made a lot of friends there, it was the isolation, which I was diagnosed with breast cancer and had to go through the whole treatment of that at that time. I looked at it when I was going through it differently than most people because I knew it was a transformation or time for me, even though it was awful. I mean, I'm telling you, it was terrible because I had to go through chemotherapy, radiation therapy, surgery, all sorts of things. But the whole time my mindset was, I knew there's a reason for this. I knew this is for transformation. It was changing my DNA. It was changing my body, and it was bringing in. I remember the very day that it brought in more extraterrestrial, actually Arcturian extraterrestrial, which came in with me on one day, whereas I am now have more. I would say alien DNA. I've got to cough, Mary. Hold on just a minute.
Yeah, just mute it and cough away. So thank you, first of all, for sharing that personal information because I don't think Dr. Gail has talked about that with anyone before on her shows. But now that it's in her past, we're able to move forward with it. And during that time period, she moved across the country, moved away from here. She's in California out there doing her thing, living by herself. I'm pretty sure that you stopped doing some of your shows around that time as well, so you could concentrate on you. So there wasn't a whole lot of outside interference, but there was these elementals. You were like your root space was connecting to the mountain out there. And it feels like your DNA was being written, encoded, activated. So they gave you that chance to just be really human for a while with the same gifts and light codes. And then they're like, now we're going to make you a metahuman. And they had to do that implantation during that period of time to completely change you on a cellular level.
Mhm.
And the changing of those cells, we would read as cancer. Uh, and there's been a lot of people who I feel like have gone through different things. Gail and I were talking before the show about a synchronicity kind of how there are certain high level healers or psychics or people with certain vibrational levels, I should say, not that they're higher, but certain high vibrational levels who have undergone illnesses or diseases in their chest area, whether this be breast cancer, lung disease, breathing issues. Like it has a lot to do with this space in this area and the transformation. And I have noticed a lot when aliens come into my healing sessions, most of the time when they come in to do surgeries for my clients, they're doing heart surgeries.
Always, yeah, not always, but yes, big time.
A lot of the time. So there's a lot that has to do with the heart space. Do you have any idea, any thought of why that could be?
Well, they're much more heart centered than we are. And they do not have as many chakras as I do. And it's different for each alien species, but they're not connected to Earth with the root chakra. And so I don't see them as much with that kind of chakra, but they're more heart centered and their heart chakra is huge. So I do think that has a lot to do with it because you're becoming more heart centered and being able to communicate from your heart, which I think their communication comes from that a lot, versus most of them are telepathic, and I think a lot of it's coming from the heart space. We're always thinking it's coming from the throat and our throat chakra, but I think theirs is actually coming from their heart, their communication. And so I think, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think that's very accurate because we look at the heart space as our space of connection. And, a lot of people think that they read, in their clairs through their third eye space or maybe through their sacral with clairsentience. And that may be true to a certain extent, but I really feel like people who are able to really connect and read, it's through the heart space because that's what's sending out the mycelium roots to everything and connecting us all in that big web of existence, and that this is where we're able to feel all of the vibrations from all of time and space and really connect in. So that would make perfect sense at that heart space there. The throat space was coming up to me earlier, so I found it interesting that you brought that up as a place that you feel like a lot of people think that they're getting telepathy from, because I wouldn't have thought that. But while you're bringing that up, there's also something that's been coming up about having light codes in the voice,
Mhm.
um, or even light language or things like that. Do you feel like that kind of flows into interdimensional energies in any capacity? Like how alien languages, do you feel like they have healing abilities?
Well, I think as humans, I think we are expressing a lot of healing energy from our voice, and that is
Hmm.
coming from our heart space. And it seems like, I continually, I see people who are going to a different vibrational level. One of the issues they have is the connection from the heart through the throat chakra. That area has difficulties. That's a big area that needs some transformation and upgrading for that to happen. But people who are doing light language, who are getting their information like we all do from higher beings or whoever our guides or different beings that are giving us information, I think that's the way they express it. Like somebody might be a writer, might scribe, likes to write. Somebody wants to throw cards. Somebody uses pendulums. Somebody different modalities that they use. I think when there's light language, I think that's that person's modality. I think it's almost, to me, it's almost like they're rocking, and they're using their hands and their voices, and the information is coming in through them that way, so they're able to talk about it. But I think that's their modality of expression.
Hmm.
Did that make sense? What I just said? It sounded garbly.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. So, what do you feel is the difference between star seeds and aliens? And then I'm going to get back on track. Because if we know that aliens are actually just interdimensional beings, like the inner earth beings or the outer earth beings, and everyone on earth's kind of been all around, so we're all kind of this star seed energy, what's the main difference between what we see as aliens and what we see as star seeds?
Well, I think it's our dimension. Like humans, we're in 3D, but we have some information in our DNA from being a star seed on a different planet or living on a different planet, and we have that in us. Some of us are able to activate it. Some of us don't want to activate it, and so that's pretty much what I consider the difference between a star seed and an interdimensional being, or an alien. Did that answer your question?
It did. So, last question that I have here, probably not, but like the last one that I want to address as far as you specifically goes. You went through a lifetime of learning to heal others physically and metaphysically. You went through a huge adjustment and transformation of yourself, vibration change, DNA change, all of that kind of stuff. And then you created this safe space to validate others who have had experiences. And that's important because when we think about this, it's like levels of experience. Someone who has seen aliens is able to understand someone who has not, because there was a time when they also have not, but someone who has not seen aliens, it has no capacity to understand someone who has.
Right,
Like you can't move up that level. There's a ceiling limit.
right.
So there is a difference in the energies there. So I love that you create this safe space, but you've also created the Solaris Healing Center space to apply the healing abilities. So I think this could answer our question about how alien energies help us to heal.
Yeah, when I'm doing the Solaris Healing Center, the Solaris is a star. And one of my first extraterrestrials I met was a gold being, and he was from there. And he took me to his star at one time. And on that star is a healing center. It also has a flight school there. So he was the one that taught me how to fly a spaceship. But I mainly focus on the healing center. And that healing center is for all these higher level beings like your angels and your power animals. You go in there and there's all these high vibrational beings. And on the Slayer's Healing Center, I'm able to bring in that energy for an hour to help heal people. And when I am, we're bringing in this blue light, because when you walk in that center, it's a blue light and it's shining on everybody. So everybody's nervous system is being calmed down so their own body can heal themselves. And so when I'm doing my show, and I do it about once a month, and I'm able to bring in that blue light for everybody. Plus, I have a specific alien. His name is, he calls himself Medical Mike. He's a gray hybrid. And a gray hybrid is a gray alien combination human. So he has some human gray elements, but he is higher dimensional. And I have other beings that come in. I usually have about 5 different ones. They channel the information through me to the person who's asking questions. So it's not actually ever me talking to them. And it can be anything about, am I going to the right doctor for this problem? Or it can be a chiropractic issue, or it can be a medical issue. We try to address all that. And then a lot of course, are chakra issues and aura issues. So we're looking at the body as a whole. We're not only looking at, like if you're a medical doctor, they're only looking at what kind of medication I can give you or what kind of treatment. If you're looking at chiropractor, we're looking at how we can adjust the spine and let the body adjust and heal itself. So when I'm doing the Slayer's Healing Center, I'm looking at the medical side, the chiropractic side, the energetic side, your chakras, your aura. It's everything encompassing, because at all different levels. I'm spitting on myself. How different levels come together. It's a cough drop in my mouth. Coming together, and the Slayer's Healing Center is looking at all that together as a person all together. And I have that ability because I've been trained in all these areas now, so I can do that.
So you've answered the question of how these aliens or interdimensional beings can help us heal. And I feel like you've also kind of vicariously answered how they can help us connect to ourselves or connect to our souls, because we are all connected. So as long as we are inclusive and accepting of other people's experiences, or that these things could exist, then we understand more about ourselves and how we exist more, how we could be more expansive, how we could be more whole. How does how do aliens or interdimensional beings fit into spirituality? How can those things be applied into spiritual teachings?
Well, I consider them more connected to source than we are.
Mhm.
So their spiritual teachings or their knowledge is probably greater than ours. So and I know a lot of people think when you're talking aliens or connected aliens, that is like terrible. The devil, you're talking to the devil. In no actuality, and it is true with the ones that are negative. Like we have the duality of aliens just like we have on Earth. But if you're talking to the positive ones and they're uplifting you and they're helping you, they are closer to source than we are. So we can learn a lot from them.
What I'm hearing, So I'll break this down for everybody involved. Gail knows when I say what I'm hearing, that it may or may not be accurate for what she's saying.
Well, I need that for what I'm hearing because I've been doing this for so long. Sometimes I have trouble breaking it down.
Just what I'm hearing over the whole experience is that you personally have gone through an energy change, learning how to heal, a DNA change in order to live your purpose, something you've been training your whole life for. And that purpose feels like, you're expressing your purpose through creating a safe space to validate others and through offering the Solaris Healing Center. But it feels like the purpose itself is wisdom, healing, and unity. Because when we're able to apply interdimensional beings or aliens into our spiritual practice, into helping us heal and into connecting us to our soul self, that's what we're doing. We're coming into wisdom, healing, and unity.
Right. Now they call me the communicator. I'm the one that's communicating between all different dimensions to the 3D world. That's what my extraterrestrial friends call me, the communicator.
I don't call you that. I'm going to call you that then. I'm writing it down.
Well, it's been a long time. It was a long time. Yeah, it was a long time to accept that. Going, why am I the communicator? I am the introvert. Why am I the one that's the communicator?
The communicator.
Yeah.
I want a cool name. I'm going to ask them for a cool name. You know what they just said? I said, I'm going to ask them for a cool name. And they said, well, you'd have to talk to us first.
Oh, Mary, calling you out. Calling you out.
They do. It's not nice. Okay. Well, we learned a whole lot here. Is there anything else that you want people to know about you, your practice, what you offer on your channel, or just anything that you want to say about any of this?
Well, yeah, I would like to say that the people who are not understanding me or can't identify with what I'm talking about, that's okay. You have not had an experience. And if you haven't had an experience, that's okay. We're so used to people um, talking about negatively about our experiences and aliens and things like that, that it really is not affecting us now as much as we're coming together as a community because we understand each other. Whenever you have an extraterrestrial experience, you'll be coming over going, oh my gosh, can you validate this? Is this what happened? And so it is okay if you haven't had an extraterrestrial experience and you don't understand my channel or don't understand what I'm doing. But if you do connect with it when you come in there, it usually means you have had an experience. Even though if you haven't recognized it yet, if you're connecting with the information, that probably means you have had an experience.
Absolutely. And another thing I can say about all of that I think is relevant to what you just said, I forgot that I pulled these 3 cards earlier. But like even just things like anxiety, depression, like things like that, those are all things that literally these things can help with, because a lot of the time if we're having extra lethargy or tiredness or just not feeling ourselves, it's because there's something that's maybe just attached itself to you for a little bit. And anytime I feel like that, I'm like, Dr. Gail, fix me. And she'll be just like that. She's not one of those long-winded people. I feel like I can be long-winded sometimes, but she's not like me. We don't tell she doesn't tell a whole entire hour-long story and then heal you. She's like, okay, you're fixed.
Well, I was going to say along those lines about the depression and suicidal thoughts and all those kind of things that people do experience. They did train me also, and I know this is going to sound crazy, as it all has, but they put this kind of halo on people's heads that have lights on it, which I was one doing that, and different lights shine to change the brain waves. So they have the ability to take these people and change their parts of their lives with the brain. Like I remember doing all of them. We did alpha waves on some people, gamma waves on some people, beta waves on some people, the way the lights shine or showed up. But sometimes what you're experiencing is what you have signed up for as your life path. So I'm not real sure who is determined by them, who is the one that gets that kind of healing or that kind of treatment versus somebody who's supposed to be experiencing all that.
Are you seeing appointments right now? Are you taking appointments?
I am booked up probably for the next 6 months, but I have shut down my scheduler on my. So if you're needing an appointment, just contact me at my email address. And you said you have that down there, don't you?
Yeah, all of that's going to be in the description. We're going to have your email down there. We also have her website, drgailstarsethealer.com, and her YouTube channel is Skywalking with Moon 7496. But also checking in at the Solaris Healing Center is a way to get in there. And you do that about once a month, I think.
Yes.
Watching some of these videos can just help you learn more about maybe what's going on with you.
And I've
And
also started color therapy on, which has been amazing. We all been learning together about doing color therapy once a month also.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most fascinating, and everybody probably wants to hear this, like, if you know you're going to eat bad, wear yellow. Wear yellow. It kind of calms it all down. And when I discovered that when I was on the channel, and we're learning together about all these colors. I don't have yellow in my wardrobe. The only thing I found was a dishcloth. I had eaten pizza, so I was looking for something. So I had a dishcloth, so I was wearing it around like an apron. But it's supposed to, the color yellow will help supersede that bad food that you ate. And so I thought, but so we were learning a lot about that on the color therapy, on how things help us. Like if you're wanting to open up your third eye and get more connected, sleep in some purple sheets or purple clothing or those kind of things. So we're learning a lot together.
What does blue do? I feel like I know the answer to it, but I wanted to just ask.
Well, blue is just very healing because I use blue a lot for the Solaris Healing Center. So I look at blue and green as healing type things. So, but anyway, it's a lot of
Well,
fun.
it's interesting because I wore blue today for no random reason, and I feel like I needed it because I had a appointment before, like a doctor's appointment for me right before this, and I was just like a bad patient. I'm a bad patient, Gail. I refuse to be seen. I refuse to be seen. I had to talk to 3 different people
Well,
before
see, I wear blue when I want to make sure my communication skills are have improved or good. And I'll make sure I wear blue. Like on the Solaris Healing Center, I always wear blue because that is a healing color.
Well, maybe I was just placing good boundaries
So
within my medical team.
that's right. Well, you're expressing yourself.
It was expression. It was expression, but also, coming from me and Gail both have a medical background. I don't know if you're like this, Gail, but I'm a bad patient because I recognize how much is ingrained and how little freedom is given, how little autonomy is actually given to the patient to decide what's right for them.
Oh, yeah.
And like, you just like, oh, well, this is this. So this is what we're going to do. And then you have to figure out how to pay for it. And I'm like, actually, no, that's not what we're going to do. Let's wait. Let's back up.
I am,
Anyways.
I am terrible like that too.
But since we're using language of inclusion and acceptance, instead of saying we're terrible about that, let's say we have amazing boundaries and we know what to do with our bodies.
We know our bodies better than they do. How about that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to get into these cards just for a second because I feel like I just wanted to show you what I pulled, but then also it was going into what Gail was talking about earlier. So I feel like they came out they keep flying out of my hand. Oh my gosh, they do. So they came out kind of like this, where there's 2 levels.
Which
Now
part?
this,
Is that Lemuria?
yeah. It is my Lemurian deck. It is. Which I didn't think that I pulled. I actually thought I pulled my shaman deck this morning, and then these were there. So whatever. But on the bottom, we have these 2 cards here. We have She of the Lotus and the Surrender card. She of the Lotus is essentially your shadow work. So this is essentially like if there's anything that needs healing, or if there's any trigger somewhere that needs to be looked at, if there's anything that's like, then we can go ahead and surrender to that and realize that they're even looking at this picture, it looks like a light being healed by something, right?
Right.
So it's almost like allowing those healing energies in, allowing that wisdom in, allowing that unity and that expansion to happen. And once we do, we get to that top card, which is ether. This is spirit. This is the big energies, the interdimensional energies, everything that's outer planet out there. So this I feel like this really brings everything full circle. And what I didn't tell you was around that paradigm shift, I pulled the air card, and you talked about how during your paradigm shift, you were really just working with the elementals out at Mount Shasta. So I found that interesting as well. But I really love that you came on here to kind of put the picture together for us between, in your transformation, you're bridging your human transformation to your metahuman transformation and giving us a different perspective to work with so that we can see you more as a whole person and how you can help us with wisdom and healing and unity. Thank you so much for coming on here today.
Yeah, it's just like you realize I'm a real person.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to say that. I'm a real person over here, guys. I like to say that. But we loved having you in our space. Thank you so much. And you guys are going to see more of her soon. I swear it, because we do lives every month, right?
That's right. And thanks, Mary, for having me.
Absolutely. Love you, doll face. We'll talk soon. Bye, everyone.